People often say Denuvo hurts game performance, but is that actually true? Today, I compared the DRM and non-DRM versions of 007 First Light side by side on the exact same hardware. The FPS results surprised me, but one thing definitely didn't. The game starts with the opening cutscene, and surprisingly, both versions deliver almost identical FPS. At first glance, there doesn't seem to be much difference. However, I did notice that the non-DRM version uses around 600 to 700 MB less system RAM. VRAM usage was also slightly lower, although the difference was very small due to my lower VRAM GPU. Moving into the second gameplay section, the story stayed pretty much the same. Performance was almost identical between both versions. Honestly, I have to give credit here. Just like in my previous comparison, Denuvo doesn't seem to be causing a noticeable FPS loss in this game. But while the frame rate remained nearly identical, I noticed something unexpected. The CPU temperature on the DRM version was consistently much higher than the non-DRM version. This was something I had never experienced before. In several, in several areas, the DRM version pushed my CPU beyond 85C and even close to 90C, while the non-DRM version stayed around 70 under the same conditions. The GPU also ran slightly cooler on the non-DRM version, although the difference was not nearly as significant as the CPU. As we continue through different areas, FPS remains almost identical between both versions. RAM usage, however, continues to favor the non-DRM version by a noticeable margin. Since I am testing on a 4GB VRAM GPU using the lowest possible settings, VRAM usage remains very similar, so the biggest difference throughout my testing was system RAM usage and CPU temperature. Inside the house, the FPS once again stayed almost identical. However, CPU power draw on the DRAM version increased to around 23 to 24 watts, while CPU temperature climbed back to nearly 89°C. Meanwhile, the non-DRM version continued running noticeably cooler while drawing less CPU power. From my testing, the frame rate stayed almost the same, but the DRM version consistently required more CPU resources and produced more heat on my system. One quick note before I finish. I actually recorded this comparison around 3 weeks ago, but due to a serious illness, I had to step away from YouTube for a while, which is why this video is arriving much later than I originally planned. Overall, I was genuinely surprised. I expected a noticeable FPS difference, but that simply was not the case. Instead, the biggest difference I observed was higher CPU temperature, higher CPU power draw, and slightly higher RAM usage on the DRM version. Of course, this is based on my hardware and my testing, so your results may vary. Thanks for watching.